Hello, I'm Fly, and this is Big Hops Any Percent. This run is fairly new, but at the same time, I've been putting a lot of effort into it, and I want to just share what I have so far with a commentated run that kind of explains everything that I'm doing and goes over the general ideas that you continue to see throughout the game, like strats, tech, all that sort of stuff. Uh, this game has in-game splits, and I think we'll probably end up using that for leaderboards with a little bit of refinement. But I have my own splits just that I can have like a personal best and comparable segments. I time it a little bit differently than the game itself times it, but I'm sure that might change when we get an auto splitter. Again, this game is very new, so I'm just kind of doing things my own way for now until we see a little more of a standardization, but we'll get there when we get there. So time starts as soon as I start this save file. I'm playing on a PlayStation controller. The glyphs should change on the bottom of the screen once I actually get in the game. Anyways, I think that's the intro. So 3, 2, 1, go. Immediately you're going to see me mashing all 4 of the face buttons just because pretty much any button on the controller can be used to mash through cutscenes. This is kind of an intro section that is really quick. There's a, piece of equipment, a permanent unlock that you can have that enables you to climb that you can find in this area. However, one thing that is really cool about this game, which I kind of have to get into immediately because we're going to unlock that ability to climb pretty quickly, is that if you progress through a section of the game into a new scene where you would unlock a piece of equipment, oftentimes if that equipment is required for the game, it'll just give it to you. So now you'll notice that Hop has a bracelet on, which allows Hop to climb. So you don't actually have to grab the climbing bracelet. Now that I'm through that, I can kind of get into what this game, like the core movement of this game. It's a 3D platformer with a lot of momentum-based movement. So you can see me kind of doing those rolls and dives consistently to maintain momentum, as well as doing wall stalls here by just using a little bit of stamina to stay relatively at the same height on the wall. If I wasn't wall stalling, it'd be really hard to maintain my height on that wall and kind of do what I did. You just saw me use an acorn that is the first veggie of the run. Veggies are, I would say, the core gameplay outside of Hop's base moveset, where veggies kind of vary world to world on what they do and where you can get them, but they essentially all have different properties, and you can use them to kind of augment the platforming that you're doing. They are really cool, really unique, and lead to a lot of creative solutions even casually. Beyond that, you can see me just kind of using Hop's core moveset. The moveset doesn't really change much throughout the run aside from getting the ability to climb. You technically unlock the ability to swim in the second world, but it doesn't really change a ton. I'm pretty sure we only use it like 2 or 3 times. One thing that I am consistently doing is explanation skipping. Normally when you find a new bug, and you can see when I find the new bug by that 3 question marks on the side, it's supposed to play a cutscene that like identifies the bug. Hop has a little bit of dialogue, but it's very slow for a speedrun. Thankfully, if you're in the air when you grab something for the first time and use or eat or whatever it is that item, if you essentially use that item before hitting the ground, you can skip that cutscene. The same thing also applies to when you're standing on certain geometry, like tightropes, which we'll get to later. But that is kind of the core explanation for now. I guess I can talk about Hop's moveset. So Hop has the roll, the dive, which are both done by using square or X on a Xbox controller, as well as being able to cancel that dive by pressing the left trigger. When you cancel the dive, it's really helpful for kind of starting a new momentum chain, or for grabbing onto certain walls just by getting out of your dive a little bit sooner. One thing I'm doing consistently in this run is corner climbing. So when you re-grab a wall by using a little bit of stamina, if you grab the same wall, you're generally not going to get any more height, but grabbing the corner of a wall seems to kind of reset it and allow you to gain a lot more height with a lot less stamina. It still takes stamina, so it's not infinite. However, it does help a lot with getting higher without using a lot of stamina. Anyways, this is Dis, minor motion sickness warning coming up. This place has like warping gravity sections. best way I can compare it to something you'd know is Super Mario Galaxy. So right here. This section is really fun and has a lot of fun movement later on. There's 4 of these sections total that we play that behave like this. There's technically more void sections, but only a few of them actually have the 0 gravity. I'm going to throw a void fruit there. Hopefully, yep, there we go, perfect. Skip having to backtrack to that plant down there in the corner and just be able to keep going forward. This is the second veggie or third veggie, I guess, after those mushroom bouncers, but those were kind of self-explanatory and I kind of skipped over that because there's a lot going on here and a lot to explain. The void fruit have 2 different purposes. During the normal void sections, those 4 void sections I talked about, they're kind of used to unlock progression. I guess in the last one you don't really use it that way, but for the first 3 void sections, the intermissions between worlds, they're all used in roughly the same way. I'm gonna do another corner climb here to avoid having to go on the side and grab some veggies. One thing to note about the dive is that it does kind of cancel your momentum a little bit. Like, it does kind of slow you down, so it's not faster to always do that. It's only really faster when you know that you're going to be restarting your momentum chain, or you know you need to cancel to grab something, or tongue something, whatever it ends up being. So now we're in the second world. We are in the desert world, primarily built around Duster Bluffs. There's a backpack we're supposed to get that gives Hop 4 inventory slots by default, but similar to the bracelet from before, you don't actually have to grab it. You can just kind of keep going, and then you'll notice as soon as we enter the next scene, the game just gives you the backpack. And then this is where we kind of unlock the main story of the game, which is we're trying to repair Copper's airship where we need 3 parts, and we're only actually going to grab 2 of them, hopefully. We're going to skip one of them because of that, like, story progression, unlocking items type thing. Alright, and now we are in the main area of the Desert Plains. This is kind of where we get introduced to the collectathon aspect of this game, which, if you collect, they are called Dark Drips. If you collect enough of them, you unlock trinkets, and you can use those trinkets to augment Hop's abilities, unlock counters, unlock locations on the compass, all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, I haven't really found a use for them yet in speedruns, so I don't collect a single one intentionally. There's a bunch of little tiny mini drips around. They're called dark bits instead of dark drips. The bits themselves are sometimes just used as like progression. I like to think of them as this game's yellow paint, but I don't really collect any of them on purpose because it's just kind of slow. However, that's another corner climb to kind of skip the entirety of this area the first time. We're gonna do a little bit of it when we come back later, but for now, we're going to enter Duster Bluffs, where normally you're supposed to get tied. You're supposed to go up to Town Hall, interrupt a meeting, and get tied up and meet the masked stranger. However, I found this really early on. I technically found this before even the Kickstarter happened, because I broke out of the demo one time. Funny story. Turns out that if you go over the gate that you're supposed to unlock later, you can just kind of skip this entire section and come back later. There are a few, I should know that there are a few things that are kind of story locked and the developers kind of make you do, which I do appreciate. You can't just skip literally everything in this game. However, normally you're supposed to unlock this gate later. There's an NPC below it that kind of wants you to go visit Town Hall, but I can just kind of skip over the top of it. And now we get to the Desert Canyon, and we're going to go into the sewers. The sewers are required because there is a piece of story progression locked behind. Eventually you get a camera, and you need to take a photo evidence of the main bad guys of this area doing something, talking about something evil, not even doing something. This is what I mentioned before about grabbing something on a tightrope. I can just grab that pill bug and it won't trigger that learning tutorial. Same with that pepper. The peppers are used to destroy the bushes, like the tumbleweeds. But fortunately, we don't really need one yet. I'm actually saving that for, like, basically the last section of this world. I'm gonna do a little bit of momentum carrying here to avoid having to throw a cactus to reach across here. The cactus is probably the most broken item in the game in a fun way and in a really healthy way, I think, for the game. Okay, that's fine. I can just do a corner climb to get over this fence. Oh, I didn't want to grab that. And now we enter lockpicking, which is really cool. I like lockpicking in this game. I think it's a really fun way to just kind of break up. I think it's a fun puzzle that works well with Hop's tongue. Like, I think it's just a really cool thing that kind of works within the world.
Let's get going.
That is the Masked Stranger. He's going to be our best friend later. And that is the desert, or at least the first part of the desert. We'll be back there later, but for now we got to do the sewers where we're going to get access to our next veggie that we're going to use for the majority of the sewers and then pretty much never after, if I remember correctly, which is the goo ball. The goo ball creates a launcher on a set point that launches 2 goo balls out of it, and you can grapple to those goo balls. They kind of stifle your momentum. They don't really, like, they don't carry your momentum as well as some other things in this game might. So we're not really going to use them a ton. We're only going to really use them to cross platforms that you kind of have to use them on. However, we are going to get into why the cactus is probably the most broken and most fun part of the speedrun. So there's a puzzle here where you're normally supposed to drain the water, and you do that twice. There's a bunch of platforming you have to do, a lot more goo ball stuff. However, the cactus has a fun property where if you use it near a ceiling and you get on the cactus, you can just kind of clip out of the ceiling. It's not always useful, but it is probably the most useful glitch in the game right now that I'm really hoping they keep. And we can just skip that entire puzzle. So now we are headed to Gully HQ, which is the main location of the bad guys in this area. We're going to kind of skip all of the intended progression of this area by just going around the side here. Very nice. Normally this elevator is supposed to go up and we're supposed to bring it back down, but if it never goes up, it never has to come back down. I'm going to grab a goo ball and store it for later. I mentioned before that we have the backpack. The backpack, again, can have 4 slots by default. It can be increased with trinkets, but that's kind of the only place where I see the trinkets possibly being useful in a speedrun sense. But at the same time, the way I've routed it, I kind of make the maximum use of my backpack slots the whole time. So I don't really see a need for any more. I'm gonna do another cactus clip here to clip through here. We're gonna skip getting the camera, but again, that's one of those story things where loading the next scene will just give it to me. So that skips having to do a bunch of stuff with the camera, getting 3 pieces of evidence to unlock this elevator shaft. And now we're gonna do one more cactus clip while we have it to skip having to do a bunch of crawling around in that vent. The vents are generally slow. So a couple of cutscenes I'm skipping here, and now we have to get a photographic evidence of the leader of the Gully Gang, Jolene, saying something evil. So yeah, a photograph of somebody saying something evil. Saying something bad. So we're gonna mash the cutscene here. And now as soon as that text bubble appears, we can just take a picture, the spoken evidence picture, and back to mashing through. Depending on the cutscene, depends on how you want to mash. If you know that you're going to get control of Hop at the end of the cutscene, you don't want to be mashing triangle at the topmost face button, because that'll keep opening your backpack, which slows down time. And now we get to do the sewers. This is the last real section with the goo ball. It doesn't really do much for us beyond this. So you're gonna hit 2 shots there. Open this door, and then while the cutscene's playing out, jump forward, because you do lose control of Hop during certain cutscenes, so that just gets me a little bit closer, a little bit farther along. Now I'm just gonna try and avoid using any of the goo balls here and just kind of carry my momentum across those. I think you're supposed to use the goo balls to get across, but I prefer to use them here. There we go. I mentioned the dive canceling before, and I don't really point it out when I do it just because it's kind of natural to me at this point. I may be able to get along. No, not really. Okay. There we go. Throw a goo ball here so I don't have to climb all those stairs. It's just a little faster. Small optimization. I'm gonna try something new here that I haven't really labbed out exactly how I want to do it. But essentially, I'm gonna try using a goo ball chain to get up here faster. I do want to break these pots because I'm gonna need that money later. Overall, it's not a ton faster rather than just climbing out, but I have the extra goo ball and I don't really have a place to use it between now and later. So I might as well. Yep, there we go. Okay, and now if I break one of these pots by just rolling into it, it's the fastest way to break the pot and get all the coins from it since you're basically on top when they spawn. Again, we're going to kind of skip all the intended platforming here and do a little bit of our own thing. This section, though, we're going to do almost as intended because by using the slingshot into all the canopies, you kind of get a lot of momentum here. We are just going to skip a few ways just to kind of cut the path a little more linear, as well as try to maintain momentum just a little better than the intended way. Oh, missed the rail. Okay. It's not the end of the world, as long as I hit that balloon. There we go. Very nice. Okay. And now we're back to that main open area of Duster Bluffs, where I'm going to grab 3 cacti. And those are going to be our cactus basically for the rest of the run. It's going to be our supply up until the ocean world, the second world, where we're going to make 1 plant to get 4 cacti back. There's a shop in every single world that allows you to repurchase veggies if you have a membership card, as well as just create potted plant versions of your vegetables and turn almost any item with a monetary value into coins. And that shop, we're going to use it to create 1 potted plant of cacti for 18 coins. So now, this is where we needed that photographic evidence. I think there used to be a way to not need it. You could just jump into the pit here. However, they changed that a while back to where you need that singular piece of photographic evidence. So no matter what, you have to go down to Gully HQ right now. That being said, we're just going to skip through all the cutscenes here and get on our way to the first boss fight of the game. There's a boss fight at the end of the first 2 worlds. The 3rd world has its own little boss fight type thing, if you will, where it's an minecart escape sequence that's pretty much an auto-scroller. Anyways, this is why we have the pepper from before. There's normally a pepper plant up there, but it's faster to just bring our own from home. Okay, that's fine. It is honestly faster to die instead of kind of carry or try and do this with 0 momentum. If you place yourself right, you can just hop on the rail while that cutscene's playing and not have to take the death that I did there. Or, I guess fallout. It's not really a death because there is like a traditional game over. With these rails, you want to try to carry your momentum as much as possible. You want to throw that first stone as far to the left as possible so you don't re-grab it instead of grabbing the stone that's on the second button that gets revealed. And then for this section, just mash to try to get the hole open as fast as possible. And now it's time for the boss fight, which I've gone through a couple iterations of trying to figure out what the best way to do this boss fight is. Still not great. I think it's just the nature of the boss fight. It's trying to force cycles on you, and I'm trying to cycle skip them in very unnatural ways. The general gist is you want to open up that cowboy hat and break open those green little dots. The first one, you can just kind of jump over, and as long as you're careful, just kind of skip the entire phase that way. However, it's not always that easy. The second 2 times, we're actually going to skip triggering that lever that's, like, it changes where it is depending on which phase of the fight you're in. However, we are going to just kind of climb between the machinery and the wall, and then get on top of the hat here. Since this platform is spinning, you can't sit still long enough to... You can't sit still long enough while you're standing on top of the machine itself to open the hat. It keeps moving your position, which resets the timer on, like, how long Hop has been trying to open something. So getting on top of the cowboy hat is essential if you want to do this skip. So grab, and then break it open. Drop the cactus part that comes out, and now's the fun part where the game doesn't know what's going on in cutscenes sometimes. I think it's the first camera position kind of gets screwed up. So you're gonna notice that as soon as I get out of this... Yeah, this is not how this cutscene's normally supposed to play out. Normally you're supposed to, like, watch, there's a reaction to the geyser kind of coming up, and there we go. Now I'm in the floor. The camera will fix itself, but this will be a persistent thing throughout the rest of the speedrun. It's really funny, and it's a minor bug that I don't think affects normal progression of the game, so I don't think it has to be fixed anytime soon, and I kind of find it really funny. That being said, we do kind of have a lingering objective of look for more evidence, because we skipped over a bunch of the objectives in Gully HQ. So now we are done with the desert world. We have talked to Joe Jr., made him happy, and kind of resolved his storyline. We've made peace in the world. So now move on to the next world. Another motion sickness warning coming up. This one's probably the best about it, if I'm being honest. The next two are pretty trippy, but this one's kind of just about as linear as it's going to get, and most of the changes are less gradual. They feel a lot more natural. Or just sudden, I guess. I think that's just kind of it for this. It's a lot less of those, like, radial ones. The next void has probably the most radial changes. I think that's probably the worst for motion sickness. This is our first time using one of these, but they've actually been in the game since the tightrope, or the desert world. The tightrope cannons don't really get a ton of use in the run because walking on tightropes is really slow. And most of the time they're used as, like, to unlock backtracking. I do like these little, like, tongue grapple launch things that spawn out of these voids. They're really cool, and they help keep momentum. They help give Hop a lot of momentum. So we're actually going to use that here. And hopefully skip as much of that tightrope as possible. Like I said, tightrope walking is generally pretty slow. This is the only real radial gravity section in this one. And now we get to fall, hopefully, into the cutscene, just straight into Dis. Thank you. Alright, and now we're gonna get to the ocean world, which is probably the largest world casually. They might be just in order of smallest to largest in my eyes. But this one has probably the most that we skip, just straight up. I'll kind of get into that as we get there, but really quickly to talk about swimming. For now, we can't swim underwater, but we're going to unlock that ability pretty quickly. For now, the safest way to get across is just to keep jumping, diving as soon as you hit the water's surface. It keeps you from burning a ton of stamina, and swimming is generally kind of slow, so it's not really the fastest. I'm really quickly going to put that away in the last inventory slot I have and pull it back out. That skips that. That's one of those explanation skips I talked about from before. Normally there's a little pop-up and a little bit of text that happens. It honestly might happen at some point because I might forget about it and either grab a bug or grab a new type of veggie. So now we are in Junktown, which we have to clear this drill in order to get the attention of the pirate. I forget the name of the gang, and I feel really bad that I'm forgetting it, but Buckos, that's it. So we have to get the attention of the buckos by fixing the drill that is on fire, or the rig that's on fire. So we're gonna climb a little bit out of order. I mean, it's not the worst thing we're gonna do in this world in terms of progression order. And there we go. Those are the 3 plugs we have to pull in order to fix the drill. Another side effect of speedrunning is that the world is still on fire for a minute. However, that's gonna really quickly fix itself in a funny way, where it just kind of pops out. And there we go. So now we get to go talk to the pirate gang, the buckos, who are gonna take us to their hideout. I guess since there's nothing really going on, I can talk about the drips and dark bits a little more. Technically, at any point right now, I can unlock the next dark drip for myself. However, that spawns a cutscene, or I guess a couple cutscenes. So I don't really ever want to do that, but technically I think I'm going to collect up to 3 total dark drips worth of bits throughout this entire run. But again, the game never forces you to, like, trigger the cutscene to unlock them. This split's called Ignore the Pirates, because normally they're supposed to, like, you're supposed to go talk to them and learn about, like, I guess their rogue agent, if you will, who's trying to fight against the machine, or the man. So we're gonna go talk to Wet without talking to the pirates, which is why this split is called Ignore the Pirates. Do a little bit of, like, out-of-order platforming. It's not anything crazy, aside from that, like, skip to get up here in the first place. And now this is Wet. I love Wet.
Sorry, kid. That's all I've got for you. Take this.
He gives you the ability to swim underwater, which is where I'm immediately going to talk about swim canceling, or I guess swim delaying. So when you dive cancel, it kind of puts Hop into a state where he doesn't really, like, he's not really actionable, or I guess, like I don't really know how to describe it, but essentially he's not put in the diving state immediately. He's not put in the underwater state immediately, so you can use it to, like, dive a little faster, or get under a little farther underwater a little faster. And now there's a whole puzzle we're supposed to do here, however. Funny cactus. And now this is where lockpicking kind of gets broken. The locks are now supposed to be done in order, but if I'm quick and precise enough, you can just kind of scrape the edges and do this horribly out of order. And now this is my favorite cutscene in the speedrun, because Wet's supposed to be there, but he's not. And then the lights go out, and now he's not there again. And he just kind of takes the part. Normally he's supposed to, like, follow you around this area, but because we went so horribly out of order, he never shows up down there. So it's supposed to be revealed that, like, oh, he's gone after the... he's gone after the lights go out. But he's just never there in the first place, so I find that one really funny. There's a couple really funny cutscenes like that, where speedrunning kind of, like, breaks them a little bit, and I just think it's really funny and entertaining. Here is the one-time use of the bubble veggie, where we're gonna throw a bubble here, it's bubble fruit there, it spawns 3, we're gonna use it to just get up and out of the rig that Wet has tried to trap us in. We're gonna go talk to Benny, who will bring us to the main rig. And now this is where we're going to make that potted plant, and then we're going to skip the majority of this world's setup, I guess. So normally there's 2 main rigs, or there's 2 other rigs, rig out plus A and B, that you're supposed to go to and do a bunch of progression to unlock them. However, with one well-placed cactus, we're going to try and skip all of that. This might take a few tries, so it's kind of nice to grab any backup money you can. The way that I've routed this, I use every single cactus once and don't really have a spot for a backup. However, I'm just going to do that to skip the cutscene of unlocking the oil. We're going to try and skip to just directly on top of this drill that's normally supposed to be lowered. The audio gets a little glitchy here. I'm still not entirely sure why, but I should be able to just kind of get past it quick enough to where it's not a super big issue. I am going to throw the cactus here, and there we go. I am through the floor. So now that skips having to lower the entire drill, which would normally take, again, going to 2 separate worlds, which is just another really cool use of the cactus clip. But the cactuses, again, are a limited resource, so it's not like the entire game can just be cactus clipped through, and there is some progression you still have to do without it. So while it's probably the single most useful glitch right now, it's not completely game destroying. Now we're gonna get into the second boss fight, which is by far my least favorite. I just think that it's a little bit rough around the edges, at least the way that I play it. I could probably play it a little better, honestly, and I think that might alleviate some of my issues. But there is one kind of... I don't even know if I want to call it a bug, because it seems intentional. But when Wet goes into certain parts of the fight, he just kind of gets invincibility where it doesn't really make sense to me. I guess it makes sense from a game logic standpoint of it would kind of like interrupt the attack and change the phase if you were to not be hurt by it. But we're essentially just gonna have to hit him as like 3 times. I don't know why that one worked on one hit.
That one didn't even hurt.
But see, on that third one, I should have been able to just kind of hit him and not have to worry about invincibility frames. But unfortunately, on that third hit, he was starting the overhead attack, which gives him invincibility frames. Even still, that was a really quick boss fight. That was like really good. But overall, that's like not my favorite boss fight in the game, or my favorite scene in the game. It works, and I only use one of the cannons, and I think it'd be easier or better casually if you didn't just use one cannon. But I just find that to be faster if you can get it right, like I kind of did there.
Thanks, Hop.
Still don't know why that first phase only took 1 hit, but I won't ask questions. And now, this is probably the trippiest void, but also my favorite because it has the most skips in there. So we're basically going to do the first room normally, and then after the first section normally, and then after that, we're going to skip around a lot. So we're going to take all of the oil off of the oil tree, or the oil bush. I think they like referring to it as bushes internally. I think Chris likes referring to it as a bush, so I'll try and use that nomenclature as much as possible. Again, minor motion sickness warning. That's kind of the worst of it, admittedly, because I don't think there's a ton of really trippy... probably later.
Come find me and we'll talk.
This is kind of where Dis explains that, like, the world's falling apart, yada yada. We need to get the, we need to collect all the dark drips to fix the void stream, which will fix, like, our worlds. But Hop is not a big fan of Dis, and neither am I. I mean, in the same way that Hop is. I just think he's an annoying purple twerp. That's why my first split where you meet him is Meet Purple Twerp. So this is kind of horribly out of order. Normally you're supposed to go through that portal and kind of progress through this entire island, but I kind of skip through the entire thing by throwing a well-placed oil ball. And then we're hopefully going to do something similar where, if you remember from the last 2 void sections, there's a bunch of void fruit that you're supposed to throw into like those little tiny like purple void hole things to spawn platforms, and I do not want to throw that right now. To spawn void platforms and make progress that way. However, I'm just gonna launch myself over here. Do another dive cancel to get deeper into the water immediately. And skip over a majority of this area. I'm gonna try something I did the other day. I don't know if it's gonna work. No, it did not. Okay. This is technically just right up there, so if you can place it right, I did it the other day, and I want to look back at the footage and see how the heck I did it. You can just jump straight from, like, that rotating platform into Dis. Anyways, that's kind of the large end of the motion sickness warning. There's technically one more, but it's very, very minor. And now we're into the final main world of the game. This one is probably the coolest in my opinion, and one of the most on-rails sections of the game, which I think is why it's one of the cooler ones. That pun was not really intended, but you will see why I said that's a pun in a little bit. We are headed into the Shattered Mountain. Gonna use my mushroom here to get up here. I'm gonna try and save the oil balls. I still haven't really found a good spot for that second oil ball. But we're just kind of gonna do a little bit of skipping, using the hop space movement, which is really cool. Because again, the movement and momentum in this game feels awesome. Whoa, a little bit of a deep fall there. I wonder, this is something new I have not thought about. Let's see, can I throw it on that? I can, okay, cool, okay. Yeah, I can skip going around there then. And then instead of rotating the crane, which they want you to do, and use that block that I got on top of before, you can just kind of use Hop's momentum to skip the entire thing. And then as a really fun aside, later we're going to come back out of here, and that block will be rotated to the other side, so we'll basically get to do the same thing, but in reverse. And now we're going to enter a cutscene. Oop. There we go. Okay. I'm going to throw the seed pot so it starts planting during the cutscene. This is just to avoid having to grab the cacti and wait for the plant later. If it's growing during a cutscene, I'm not losing any time there. We're going to grab all 4 cacti off of that and immediately use one of them. There's like a giant rebellion against the machine, like the corporation here. It's an overarching theme that kind of keeps coming back throughout all the worlds. Big fan. So this is a gate that's supposed to unlock later, but hopefully, there we go. Come on, get through. There we go. Let me get through later by skipping, and that skips a bunch of story and areas of the game. There's a bat there. We don't know who that bat is. We're supposed to know who that bat is. That's Remy. And now this is where no pun intended, we're kind of on the rails here, where these are a bunch of different puzzles that we have to do. Where essentially we have to get these minecarts over to these gates and unlock our way through. I've tried going around or going through like collision and whatnot, and at the end of these tunnels, there's something you have to power that always remains consistent. Like you always have to power the mine shaft at the end, otherwise it will not unlock progression. Trust me, I have tried. Also gonna try something here where I'm going to break this one and then run as far away from this as I can. And if I run far enough away, I'm pretty sure those voxels will despawn and just kind of let the minecart through. Yup, there we go. So if you're far enough away from certain objects like that, due to the way that the game handles them, at least I'm pretty sure that's how it works, you can just despawn them. So you don't have to do that second set of like breaking the rocks. We're also going to get access to green apples here. Green apples are one of my favorite casual items. We're going to save one for Mineshaft C, hopefully. Mineshaft C is a really good use of one. Almost forgot the puzzle here. Okay, so we're going to break that open. Switch the sides. Hopefully not get lit on fire. We're going to come through here. We need this one more time. I'm gonna throw it at that. Oh, I overshot. Oopsie. Okay, come back. And we're gonna send that backwards and rotate this to be facing the right direction. Pull it back a little more. There we go. Now it's going the right way. I don't technically need it, but what I am gonna do here is try and launch a rock into this wall. Breaking the rock walls spawns a few coins. And that's technically enough for another cactus plant. And if I really need to, I can get another one. I'm gonna hopefully not need it. We're gonna skip a section of Mineshaft B.
Keep powering the other mine shafts, and we'll be knee-deep in treasure before you know.
Thank you, Remy. We're gonna skip a section of Mineshaft B because this one is probably the most auto-scroller-esque. So we're gonna clip out immediately, get on top of it, and just kind of get... Oh, back inside. Okay, that's fine. This is something relatively new I've been trying out. Still not sure if this is the best use for this final cactus that I kind of have left over in my inventory. Actually, wait, you know what? Let's see. Can I grab that while staying out of bounds? I don't think I can. So you know what? We're not gonna try it. Okay, so then, since this is new, I'm pretty sure I go over here. And now, normally, I think I have to go one more, actually. So normally, if I didn't have to do the last little bit of progression in this area, I think I'm just gonna burn the stamina, hopefully. Yeah, I'm just gonna burn all my stamina, why not? If you didn't have to do the last bit of progression to unlock the gates, you could just clip through here. But unfortunately, we have to do the last puzzle in this area, which involves spawning a minecart here. Thankfully, because you can kind of like derail the minecarts on accident. Cool. Because you can derail the minecarts on accident, they added a bunch of checkpoints to help with respawning the minecarts. So essentially what I did there was skip a couple of the puzzles in Mineshaft B and not have to go through the auto-scroller ones. Oop. Accidentally hit the minecart with the gate. Oopsie. I'm still convinced that it's faster. There might be a faster way to get through Mineshaft C using a cactus skip. Mineshaft A is pretty linear in terms of its level design, from what I remember clipping out of bounds, but that's what I found for Mineshaft B. Again, if we don't do that one, there's kind of one cactus left over that you can kind of do whatever with. However, there are 2 more cacti that we're going to use that kind of have a set location, as you can see by my inventory. We're also going to save that last green apple for a section of Mineshaft C here. Every mineshaft has a different type of minecart. The first one is the pull minecart. The second one, the minecart always just goes forward. And the third type of minecart is that you can ride in it. This is another one that's very like on-rails, auto-scroller-esque. And unfortunately, we kind of just have to do parts of this. You can technically skip this first minecart here, but I find that it's about the same time either way. And I'd like to save that green apple for later. So now we jump out here. We have to unlock the path forward, which we're going to use an out-of-bounds clip for. Oops. So we're going to get on top of this pole here, which goes out the top, because sure, why not? I don't even know how much faster this is, if I'm being honest. However, I do know that you can do it, and I like going out of bounds, so I like doing it. And now we can get on here. Kind of skip our way forward, because I love the grapple system in this game. The grapples are really fun. You're going to see one really cool use of it in a little bit. And now this is where that last green apple comes in handy. So this puzzle is another one where we kind of take advantage of the fact that you can respawn the minecart. Normally you're supposed to like progress the minecart through here, but I don't care. I'm instead going to bring the green apple over and throw it about there. And then grapple on, skip having to do a bunch of platforming, as well as probably, it tries to tell you to bring the minecart over there. However, I never did that even casually. I just kind of did something like that in my casual playthrough. And now we respawn the minecart over here, which means we never have to rotate that center platform. So we can just kind of drive it through. I like this section of the game, and I like the fact that you can't super skip it, because it requires you to just do the puzzles fast instead of just break the game in half. It promotes bringing items. Like it's a really nice section of the game, in my opinion, just on every level. I think it just works really well. Casually, speedrun-wise, I really like it. And now we jump into this cutscene, and we get thrown in jail. So, like I said, the band and the rebels are kind of going against the Havenites, I guess. I think if I remember their name correctly.
Get comfortable.
Haven
Lockup is airtight. They didn't think of the cactus, though. So if I throw the cactus on the corner, hopefully that's enough to get, yep, out we go, and over we go. Now if I walk around enough, there we go. Gotta grab the camouflage. That makes us look
Wow.
like
Somehow that makes you look even worse.
even worse.
Let's get out.
But now we blend in with the Havenites, so we can kind of use this to get access to areas that were normally, or we used to not be able to.
I think so too.
Hop. Okay, but hurry.
So now we're gonna go back through and get back to the mine, because now that we've powered all 3 mine shafts, we have the elevator in that main area powered. I feel bad I haven't really talked about when I'm dive canceling, but it just kind of happens naturally when I feel my momentum changing. So now here we are,
Let's go.
going down into the mines.
This is so bad.
Right?
Again, with a little bit of the camera and the cutscenes being a little silly because I've been speedrunning. Here we go. Normally, I don't think you're supposed to have access to this or look at this cutscene this way. But now we're in the deep mines.
This rules.
This is where the last airship part is supposed to be. However, actually I want to keep that flux, so we're gonna do this. There we go. Those veggies are probably one of my favorites to use casually, where it just kind of creates that zero gravity field you can swim in. I just think it's a really cool concept, and I think it gets a lot of use in a lot of like non-niche cases. I feel like it's just very applicable everywhere.
I'm sure there's treasure down here.
I completely forgot to skip split for go to jail, so we're just gonna skip that split again. We're gonna skip all the puzzle here by just kind of going up again. Gonna get a little more height from using that high jump by crouching in place and then jumping. And now we're just gonna go around the outside and not worry about using the minecart here because it's not very fast. Oop. And that's why we like bringing the extra flux, so I can just throw this and use it to recover. I probably could have used extra stamina there if I had it. However, I did not have it. Let's see, did I get in? No, I didn't. Okay. I'm pretty sure that if you're precise enough about it, you can just dive into that hole without having to watch that cutscene. And just a little bit of a cutscene skip there. Anyways, this is where we're supposed to get the last airship part by activating that drill. However, if you've been keeping good count, I've got one last cactus, which means we're going up and out. We're gonna skip 2 cutscenes here. This one we're kind of forced to watch a little bit. I didn't want to grab that wall. So if I'm precise enough, I can get back in bounds here. There we go. Very nice. And that skips a bunch of cutscenes as well as grabbing the final airship part. However, the game will just give it to me upon next scene load, which will be at the end of this minecart escape. This is the final area's equivalent of a boss fight, where we're just going to kind of have an on-rails minecart segment for a little bit. That's a really cool, fun section, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of the minecart physics in general, but that being said, there's a bunch of fun stuff to do here, as well as some cool platforming that takes advantage of Hop's moveset. So this is a very on-rails and kind of slow section. I don't really have much to talk about in terms of the speedrun. But again, this game's movement's so cool with little stuff like that. Oh, right, I'm supposed to not be here. Hang on. There's one section where I am just going to skip the minecart because I find it faster. Instead of having to do all the minecart logic there, I can just kind of run around, run along the rails, and get about the same speed. I just find it a little faster because you don't have to worry about jumping between all the minecarts and resetting it. I guess that's something I can talk about, but again, that section is kind of slow. There isn't a whole lot to talk about. And then here... Again, just another section where I can abandon the minecart and dive in, get into the zero grav area. Thank you, Chris, for the 2 sandwiches there, so I can replenish my health. Health isn't really a big factor in the speedrun a majority of the time, unless you're taking a lot of accidental falls. There's one section at the end where right now it's a little bit broken, and you just are forced to take damage in the basically final section of the game. So, unfortunately, you do kind of have to keep your health high for that reason. Thankfully, before that section, there's a lot of health. A lot of ways to get health back, and you can pretty much always have max health before leaving this area. Depending on the type of minecart you're in, you get a bunch of different little abilities. Like the little kind of pogo things on the side allow this minecart to jump between rails, something that I skipped over a little bit before, as well as hiding to just negate all damage, which is nice. And this is probably the slowest part of the minecart ride, which is probably why I'm not a big fan of it. It does look cool though. So we get the triple high minecart. And then we do the big loop-de-loop. Now we just remove the lower sections. That one's having a good time. And now we're basically done with the escape sequence.
Give us a.
Remy's whole thing is that she's like very against the world and just not a big fan of puns and silliness, from what I've gathered. And that is the escape sequence. Not the slow loads again. Alright, yeah, this is probably gonna ruin the PB. Oh well. This is why I want an auto splitter. Because sometimes the loads just get really slow. I don't really know what does it here. Kind of tempted to like try and diagnose it myself, but there's something here. I think it has to do with not doing certain objectives, which takes forever to load. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's just gonna kind of persist through the rest of this. Fun fact about this cutscene, you can grab a bomb. You're technically still actionable for a little bit. But yeah, you can see my loads are a little bit slower now overall, which just kind of stinks and is something I'm going to have to play around. Or, I guess, time around. Anyways, Dis wakes up, or Dis wakes us up. He kind of gives us like, hey, come back to where you started. Remy and the rest of our band are going on tour, which we would have noticed if we were paying attention to the plot at all, or engaging with the plot at all. But that is not what we were doing in the speedrun. In fact, they're actually going to make fun of us. Shoutouts to the devs for this one. We're going to just go back to where we entered this world as fast as possible, just where Dis wants to meet us. Yeah, the loads are just a little slower. This game is brand new, so hopefully that'll be fixed relatively soon. I'll probably talk to the developer about it later today. I know I already gave a log, but there's other pressing stuff that's probably more important than this, so I'm not overly concerned with it. Again, if we get an auto splitter that pauses on loads, I'm not concerned about the timing of things. But here's the developer saying, hey, what the heck, you're not going to say goodbye? And yes, we are not going to say goodbye. We're just going to leave them there. I have one spot for a green apple, so I'll keep that. Probably as a health regenerator. Yeah, okay. I need a little more momentum to do that. So we're gonna go back up here. Oh, right. This is here. Teehee. Kinda forgot. Now we're just gonna jump back through all this platforming here. I am probably gonna get a little bit low on health here, which is gonna be a little bit dangerous toward the end of the run. If I die, it's not the slowest thing in the world, but it's still annoying. And saving and quitting probably won't save my load times. So there really isn't a reason to do that. Anyways, now Dis is going to bring us back to Duster Bluffs, where we can turn in our 2.5 airship parts.
Stuff he said about Mom and Lily can't be true.
We're supposed to have all 3 by this point, but again, we skipped getting one. So the game just doesn't care. Again, the game gives you progression items if you skip them, which is something I really like about this game. They really promote speedrunning in that sense of like with the in-game splits, with kind of giving you the required progression items in cutscenes like that. I just really appreciate all the things the developers have done for this game, for speedrunning and just in casually. I think it's a really fun time. Anyways, this is probably the funniest cutscene in the game that's currently broken as a result of my speedrun state. So, normally, well, we can see inside the airship. You're supposed to take the airship, and there's supposed to be a cutscene of it entering one of the void portals that we've seen so many of. However, because I've got this weird state where like the first camera of every the first camera position doesn't really get acknowledged, we just get to stare at Hop and the airship. There's another airship like outside that's supposed to be going through a portal right now, but again, because of the weird funny state we're in, yeah, you can just hear the sound effects, but we don't actually see any of that happen. And now we're entering pretty much endgame at this point. So there's one last void section, one last minor motion sickness warning, where we're just gonna kind of launch ourselves as high up on that mountain as we can, and avoid as much of that platforming as possible by keeping the warp gravity as long as possible. It's actually in our best interest to not keep it through the entire way, because as I found out through trial and error, if you keep the messed up gravity the entire time, like even up here, this is not considered a gravity floor, so it will not reset the gravity to face the right side, or I guess upside down. I don't know how or right side up. So you do want to reset your gravity there. You can't just skip to the top right now. You can, but you basically are forced to save and quit. With that in mind, Dis is now mad at us because he's been trying to help us this whole time, but we don't really know that, and Hop's kind of a little bit of a brat about it. But to be fair, Dis has not made it nice, or made it easy on Hop. So now Hop has to work together with the Void Stream itself. We're gonna get access to some of the coolest movement in the game, kind of become a little mini Dis ourselves. Got that same color palette going on as Dis, the same eye color and all that. And now we get to the fun section of the game where we're kind of going to retread some areas we've seen and some we haven't. Where we have to get all of the dark drips in an area, and there's one for each world. Yeah, I'm bleeding a little bit of time on my live split here just because, like, you know, loads are long. So with that in mind, we are now entering the final section of the game where we essentially have to do a couple retreads of areas we've been that are now voided over. But we have access to these new like star abilities, these little star follow behinds, which you can use to double jump, which are really cool and really fun. I understand why they're only in this section of the game, but I wish they were in more of the game. And you can use it to get some crazy speed going. So I'm gonna grab a couple here and then just kind of launch myself at this last light trip. And there we go. Probably gonna have to heal here because it sounded like I took damage. I could be wrong. Yes, I did. So I'm just gonna eat that green apple. Honestly, there's not really a great use for veggies in this because this is pretty much like relatively on rails. I mean, you can go as fast as you want during this, but I'm gonna take damage here again because one of those bubbles spawns before you can even move, so you are forced to take a half heart of damage there. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna take one more piece of damage on my way out of this area because right now on transition Hop is not invincible. It's something I brought up to the devs as a way to kind of remedy this issue. I have game overed here before to this kind of like forced damage. Anyways, we're going through an outpost that we actually didn't see because this is one of the ones we skipped earlier by doing that massive skip on the main rig in the ocean world. There's another point of damage that I've taken. Fortunately, I don't think I'm going to take 1.5 hearts of damage in this last area. This is probably my favorite one, honestly. It's a retread of the Shattered Mine where we came, like kind of where we came in, the area we've seen a couple times now. This will be our third time going through it. The audio in here is a little messed up. I think there's just a lot of entities, so community gets a little busy. Go. again, this game is relatively new, and I'm hoping that a good number of the bugs that we've been having are going to get patched. The devs have been really on point about noting things and wanting to make sure this is as good of experience as they can make it. And there we go. That's the end of fixing the void stream. So now we got one last cutscene. We are going to talk to the fountain again. Oh, I'm going to be injured for the cutscene. One fun fact about cutscenes is that they continue to keep your health throughout the entire thing. So Hop is just going to be permanently taking damage throughout the entire rest of the game because I have no way of healing it, and healing it for no reason would be slow.
I know out of malice or something like it, but
We're going to kind of reconcile with Dis here. His whole purpose was to fix the void stream, and he's like, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry. So we're going to have one last little cutscene here. Dis is going to be like, I'm sorry. Thank you for fixing the void stream, and I'll take you home now. And then the last step of this run, time will be as soon as the final split happens on the speedrun timer in-game. Oh, that was still... Huh, that was still faster. Cool. This is probably going to be like a high 1 hour. Because the home split really isn't much to write home about. You know what? Oh, okay, I was going to try and grab that butterfly and just get myself an extra stamina. I don't even think it's necessary.
It's smaller than I remember.
Do a dive cancel there to try and get my momentum going a little faster. Throw a flux here. And there we go. That is basically the end of the run. Thank you so much for watching. Time will be coming up as soon as that final split triggers that says home.
You're back.
So we're going to skip all this dialogue. And that is time. Wow, almost sub-hour. I'm convinced it would have sub-houred if I didn't get stuck in those loads. I feel like those are really long toward the end, but unfortunately it's just kind of a byproduct of the patch I'm playing on right now. Anyways, this game is awesome. If you don't have it, please get it. And that's kind of where the speedrun's at right now in my mind. I'm hoping to compare strats and get some other people in on this really soon. And yeah, thank you so much.